doubles and coffee, EBC, EBC. Why would the EBC not simply validate a vote cast by having the independent presiding officer simply add his or her signature during the recount to a ballot that had been cast? Did you hear what I said? A ballot that had been cast by a citizen. And one of the mass media editorials was basically espousing the importance of every vote counting. Every citizen who wakes up, says their prayers, eats their doubles, drinks their coffee, goes to the polling station, gets their name checked, shows their ID, gets their ballot paper, takes it behind the screen, chooses a political party, puts their X, comes back to the person, shows them, dips their finger in the ink, and puts their vote in a box that is then locked and sealed. That every person who takes the time to do that deserves that their vote will be counted. Then I ask you, the wonderful, beloved, fair-minded citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, when there is a close race and there's a recount, and you're examining each ballot, and the presiding officer, who is the referee between the UNC, the yellow, and the PNM, the red, sees a ballot that has been cast by a human being, a citizen who went through that whole process and thought it important enough to vote, but that a returning officer, an EBC official or two, heard and didn't put their signature on the ballot. What would go through the thought processes of this referee to not just simply initial that ballot in the recount and count it? What would motivate? What would the mens rea be? What would the passion be? What would the desire to change or to be illogical? What would it be that would force someone to do the illogical? To say, well, that ballot is in that sealed locked box, a citizen voted, but I'm not going to add my initials to it. And then I'm not going to put it on a queue on it for query for later recounts. When you're in a tight race that you're trying to say the election is tied, and rather than deal with that one very critical, important ballot which breaks the tie, now it must be noted at this point that the presiding officer knows there is a UNC vote. Because when you open it, you see the UNC rising sun and a big X stamped on it. So whatever decision is being made by the so-called independent referee is to stymie and thwart one team, in this case, the UNC, the yellow. What could possibly be the motivation? Well, I answer, because it's PNM. They have PNM in their heart. And how am I able to say this with such certainty? Because when they put Narcissus Scope at the head of the EBC, the independent EBC that's to referee in a two-party system between PNM and the UNC, Narcissus Scope is the niece of a former sitting minister, Maxi Coffee. Narcissus Scope is the best friend from school for decades of the deputy political leader of the PNM, Dr. Nyan Gadsby Dolly from St. Augustine Girls High School. They are aligned, they're close like sisters, they're friends. Does that strike you as someone who will be impartial? Someone that passes the benchmark of apparent bias? Does that strike you as a person who should be a referee, independent referee in such a critical contest? I think not any reasonable person would know that's not so. But then this Narcissus Scope gets to select in every jurisdiction who they're going to put as returning officers to be linesmen or VAR officials. In other words, other referees in contested seats, especially marginal ones. And keep in mind, Trinidad and Tobago may be a huge place with many voters, but elections are only decided in a key few critical seats. In a general election, an entire election is decided in a few marginals between 5 and 7 seats, not the 41. And it's only decided by approximately 800 to 1,500 votes in each one of these marginals. Keith Christopher Rowley under COVID-19, when 35,000 people were not allowed to come back home, and he, the PNM, could determine who could come and who can't come. He won an election to control all the resources of this country by 2,651 votes in 2 marginal constituencies. So gerrymandering and cheating is very easy in an election, in a system created like Trinidad and Tobago. Now you must remember that this was the PNM's mantra, their strategy, their plan, their nefarious attitude from the beginning. In Marlborough House, the one sticking point where we nearly didn't get independence because Capildeo was not agreeing in Marlborough House in London, was that they wanted independent official experts to create the boundaries, the electoral boundaries for the independent country of Trinidad and Tobago. Dr. Williams somehow, with the gift of gab, convinced Capildeo up there, let's not embarrass ourselves, let's get independence. When we reach home, I, Dr. Williams, the PNM, will assure you that the boundaries will be redone by an independent scientific organization to provide fairness and equity. When they return home, Dr. Williams switch off your hair and their hand nothing and leave it just so. Y'all look at the map. Y'all see yellow right through and see 7-7. And that gives you questions, it gives you pause. You see that the accommodation, the UNC and the NTA got some 186,000 votes, while the PNM only mustered 130,000 votes. 56 to 58,000 more people voted for the UNC and the NTA than voted for the PNM. Yet it's 7-7. This began way back in 1961 and continues with the EBC that continues to be PNM, favored by PNM. When Narcisscope was put there, it went to a new realm, just like President PNM Kangaloo. Narcisscope is a PNM friend, a PNM supporter, takes pictures with Gatsby Dolly all over social media. She loves her friend. And then you see the EBC creating boundaries and creating seats, and somehow these seats just miraculously lean towards the PNM. You saw the EBC in Tobago take instruction from the PNM Rowley about how many seats to make in Tobago. They took now an independent organization taking instructions from a team that will be in the race that they are the referee for. Think about that, as ridiculous as it sounds. And they followed instructions of Rowley and moved Tobago from 12 to 15. Do you know, in a wave of discontent, a tsunami against the PNM in Tobago, a tsunami of hatred for Keith Christopher Rowley, a born Tobagonian, where they want to take his navel string and pelt it back somewhere into the ocean? Do you know the one seat that withstood the tsunami of discontent was one of the new seats created by the independent EBC? The EBC goes throughout the country and tries to find seats and carve them out, even in UNC strongholds. Roystonia, they carve out where they put HCC, PNM House of Flood, and thought they would win, and they still lost. Edinburgh 500, when they divided up for the general election, they went in Chaguanas to try and find a piece of a seat that PNM could possibly dig out in the heartland of the UNC and create Chaguanas East that somehow became a kind of marginal. That's what has been done and is being done. So when you think about it, And why is this being done? A senior official who's not a UNC or PNM really, but a patriot of Trinidad and Tobago called me yesterday, nearly in tears. What you all doing about this EBC, this biased PNM EBC, this lack of independence of the referee of a election that shows that this country does not have democracy? What you're doing? Or you're going to court? What is... And the only thing I could tell him is, there is nothing we could do but hope and pray that the country unites like Tobago against the tyranny of dictatorship and cheating. And then when you're in power, you have to do something and change something to make it fair. Because the PNM has been allowed by the mass media to do what they want. The mass media, who is now crying that each vote should count, allowed Rowley to put the niece of a former sitting PNM cabinet minister as the head referee in a two-party state. The best friend of Dr. Nyan Gatsby, Dolly Rowley's favorite, her best friend from St. Augustine Girls. Does that sit right? Now you all are questioning, why would a returning officer not just sign a ballot? You want to know why? Because UNC would have won fairly and squarely. And that's not what they're there for. They've been hand-selected to ensure that the PNM, with a little bit of red, can claim victory with 7-7. With getting 56,000 votes less, could somehow say, we tie, we draw, we get success. That the PNM could claim victory and control all the resources in seats that they win by 2,600 votes. That is a system that was handed down to us by Dr. Eric Williams in 1961 into 62 and continues to get worse. And that's why the PNM, they don't claim that the PNM has some great machinery and the PNM is this. The PNM are a bunch of cheaters. The PNM have no moral capacity or authority. They don't believe in performance and fairness. They are flipping cheaters. So that's why the EBC PNM head chose EBC PNM personnel who would not simply be fair and sign a ballot. That's where we reach. And if that does not get you angry, if that does not tell you reject the PNM throughout this country, then I don't know what else will motivate you. Blessings. Go and have your doubles and coffee.